Okay, gang. So welcome to week 2 of New to Customer Success. We are on customer segments and customer detail part 2. All right. So we're looking at the customer segment screen here, and we can see, our chart with our little color-coded dots here. And then if I scroll down, we're just going to take a look at the columns uh, at the risk of sounding repetitive to the people that have been sitting here on multiple recordings. I'm going to go through these columns one more time. So we have the companies on the far left, then our tech debt, which is made up of our replacement costs and all of our expiring and or expired devices on the budget forecast. Then we can see our employee count at the company level. And then we've got these two columns here for contract MRR and then segment value, right? So contract MRR is looking at the included contracts on the customer detail screen and what that MRR adds up to. Okay. Segment value is actually a manual override. And the reason why you might need to use that is if you have a bunch of opportunities out there and, maybe this is a prospect and not, not a new customer yet. So you're building all of these, opportunities and recommendations and stuff for this prospect. So a segment value manual override is eliminating the need for contract MRR and vice versa. If we have contract MRR, we're not going to have a segment value. Okay. So then this overall value field over here is looking at one or the other, but not both. So it's either going to match the contract value, or if we don't have contracts, but we have opportunities, then it's going to match the opportunity value total. Okay. And then we can see their effort score here. All right. That's our effort with this customer. And then their total stack alignment. Okay. And then the last column is the customer segment. So we can see which segment this, particular company falls into as we go down the list. So now when we look at the customer segments chart, okay, what we're looking at here is value left to right. So left side of the vertical axis is low value. Right side of the vertical axis is high value. Okay. And then effort is up or down. So below the horizontal axis is, low effort. So that's good for you. And then high, above the horizontal axis means high effort. Okay. So value left to right, right being best, effort up or down, down being best in this case. Okay. And then where those intersect. And that's where these dots meet on this chart. Okay. Just to point out real quick before I get into the dots, we've got this customer segment cut here. Okay. So this cut 3,500, that's just industry standard, MRR, median MRR value. So 3,500 a month. Okay. So we're looking at 3,500 being our cut, and then that determines value left or right. So anything to the right of the vertical axis is going to be over that 3,500 threshold, right? Okay. And then anything to the left is obviously going to be under that 3,500 threshold. We can see the Lacuna ink with the pop-up here is 16, 17, right? So low value. And then we see these outliers out here on the far right. So these ones with these double hashes that you can see. So what that means is an outlier is at least double this segment cut in MRR value. Okay, so like if I hover back over this Wonka Candy Co again, we can see this outlier has been plotted at the edge of the chart for visibility. So the value on this is $11,865, which is obviously more than double the segment cut of 3,500. Goliath National Bank over 10K, almost 11K. Ollivander's Wand Shop over 15K. So outliers are not necessarily a bad thing. It's simply letting you know that this customer can't be seen on the chart because their MRR value is so high above the segment value, at least double. So remember that. And then we've got our color coding, right? So we've got green. Obviously, green is good in terms of health. Yellow is going to indicate, health in the mid-range, needs attention possibly. And then red would be your, bad health scores, right? If you can actually see the health is 41% on this Hunter Lodge that I'm hovering over. So anything under 50 Okay. And you actually have the ability to determine what those health cuts are and stuff, and we'll go over those in a few minutes. So before I move on from the customer segment screen, do we have any questions from the audience on how this effort and value is determined, and why the customers fall where they are? Nope. Okay. One last thing that I didn't cover, that I did cover in the previous week too, is how these segments are determined, right? So when we're looking at the chart, we've got A in the upper right-hand corner, B lower right-hand corner, C lower left-hand corner, and D upper left-hand corner. Okay. And you can actually edit that. Whoops, sorry, wrong gear icon. So if I click on the gear icon, you can actually choose what your segment names are. I've seen people do, 1, 2, 3, 4, or even reorder these and make A their lower right-hand quadrant, because that's like the sweet spot, right, of where low effort meets high value. So they've reordered them so that A is their, sweet spot customers, and, D would be at the very top in the right-hand corner, where C and B are kind of your worst. So you've got options there, and we accept up to 3 characters. So you can even make abbreviations for high touch, tech touch, low touch, things of that nature. Okay, so you've got options with the way that your segments are set. Okay, so I mentioned the health score, right? So we can see yellow, we can see green, and we can see red. So if I go into customer account settings, and then we're going to go to health and effort admin. Okay. In here, we have an option for health effort cuts. So if I go to that, 2 things can be set here. So one, you can actually determine the colors that you'd like to use to represent good health, bad health, medium health, right? So you can actually change these colors. And then the cut, so where the score is cut. So in this case, we're saying the max score for red is 54.999. So anything 55 and above is going to appear yellow, right? And then max score for yellow is 79.999. So anything 80 and above is going to appear green. And obviously green maxes out at 100. Okay. And then min scores too, right? So anything below 55 is red, and so on and so forth. So you can determine what you want those cutoffs to be, and then what you want these colors to be. These are just matching our logic that we have on the VCIO side of red, green, yellow. Okay. So you can set that there. Now, we also talked about health and effort. Okay. So how do we determine where those scores come from? All right. Here we've got the ability to set health metrics and effort metrics. So if I go into the health metrics screen, these are some preloaded health metrics here. And some of these have been edited as well. So like, for instance, we've got a life cycle default assessment. So what that's doing is that is actually tied to the assessment side on the VCIO side of the house. So we can pull in an assessment to determine what the score on this particular metrics would be, right? This metric, I should say. And then Cyberwall, cyber insurance, fifth wall assessment as well. So same deal here. We're just including a very specific assessment template and what the score of that most recent assessment will be. And that's going to determine what the health score on this particular metric is. And then we start to get into some manual adds. So when I hover over this one and click on this, you're going to see this is a custom metric. So when you see that on the customer detail screen, a custom metric is going to be a manual slider. Okay. So you can determine what the maximum value of that manual slider is, and then what the weight of that score is as you slide up or down the bar. So if I set this weight at 1, then every time I slide the bar, it's going to go in multiples of 1, just 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Whereas if I set this at 10, then you go from 50 to 40 to 30, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that is a manual slider, and that is considered a custom metric. So looking at these, we can also see right here, we've got our Crewwho CSAT integration set up. So this is actually pulling from integration and giving us the CSAT score for any, given customer that has that CSAT, survey. So if you want to add or take away a metric, okay, so if we wanted to say remove this, this assessment metric, we can just drill into that with the pencil icon and then delete this, okay? And then if you wanted to add a metric, you're just going to come here and say add new health metric. And then so you have two options. You have a data-driven option and then a custom option. Data-driven, where health is concerned, allows us to get into either an assessment that's been imported in or a CSAT score. And we have those three CSAT integrations. So we can pull from assessments or CSAT on the health side, or we can create a custom metric, which is going to be that slider. Okay. Now, the same thing basically applies to the effort metrics. It's just looking at effort instead of health. So there are some different options. Okay. So segment effort, if I hover over this one is going to tell us that's a custom. So that's where you're clicking and you're sliding that slider and saying, okay, this is where we're at this month. This is where we're at this quarter. It's kind of, it seems like it's arbitrary, but it depends on what you guys are trying to determine in terms of what their effort score is, other than what our integrations are. Okay, so we have some manual ones here. We have integrations with your PSA tool that can look at number of tickets across all companies, and then we determine the effort based on how many companies you have in the system and how many tickets are average for those companies and where this particular company falls in that average. And that's how we determine what the effort is based on that metric. And then we have the ability to do a risk assessment, right? So we can pull a score in from a risk assessment. And then the stack alignment, that's going to be another manual slider. You'll see that's custom metric. So I'll show you what this stuff looks like on the actual customer detail screen. Same thing applies here if you wanted to add another. And then we have the same two options, but there are three data-driven metrics from the effort score. You can do assessments, you can do number of tickets and number of locations, and both of those pull from your PSA, and it looks at number of total companies, number of total tickets or locations, and then what the average is versus how many locations and or tickets XYZ company has compared to all other companies. And that's how those metrics are determined. And then of course we've got that, custom metric option, which is a slider. Okay. So now when we go to the customer detail screen, the customer detail screen is what helps build out that customer segment graph that we saw earlier, right? Where those dots fall on the chart. So we're looking at things like segment, health, effort, and alignment. Okay. So if I go into our health metrics, so we saw what was set earlier in the settings. So this is what those actually look like on paper, in person, live and in living color. So we can see what that most recent assessment score was, and it's an 87, so that's good, right? So that's actually helping their health score. We don't have a cyber insurance assessment here, so that's an NA. And then this is a manual slider, right? So if I climb up here, you can see that right now their health score is an 86, which is very good. So just by sliding this slider, right, I'm going to say, they're at a 20 as a good fit, right? Not a good fit for us. Okay. So that actually scores at 40% because we were on a scale of 50 instead of 100, right? And now when I scroll up, you can see the damage that did to their health score. Okay. So that's why you want to be careful with those custom manual slider metrics, because small changes can make a huge difference with the overall score depending on how you set the weight and all of that. So good fit actually crushed their score. So we're going to put it back where it was. It was at a 46, and there we go. Okay. Tickets processed. So we don't actually have this is going to be a manual one. So if we said 73, that's going to be high, right? So that's going to also affect their health score. It actually didn't affect it that bad, which means the weight that was set is very low, like at a 1, right? And then we've got our Crewwho CSAT integration, so that's pulling directly from your customer surveys, and then determining what that score is based on those averages. Sentiment score. So this is going to be another manual slider where we're saying, okay, this is where, this customer sentiment is. You wouldn't need this if you had a CSAT integration, but this originally was in place of having a CSAT integration. So right now this is overkill, and we could go into the settings and delete this one, right? This is completely customizable and up to you guys as far as what you want to include. I actually dragged that score down a little bit. You can see it didn't affect it too much. But those manual sliders can be a big deal when it comes to determining what the health or effort score is. And then we also have our other CSAT integrations set up because, like I said, we've got the 3. So for demo purposes, we got all those integrations set up. And then this was a custom one here. So org captured key players. So we've got that set at a 5. So that's saying that out of all of the key players that we have available to us at that organization, we've captured 5 of them, right? Which is a 50%. So if I slide that up, obviously, the closer you get to 10, the better, right? And then that's going to affect positively that health score. So now we're back at an 86. Okay. So that's how you determine your customer health metrics. You can decide what metrics you want to pull in here and how much of that you want to be manual. And then, based on whether you're using 3 metrics, 4 metrics, 10 metrics, whatever, however many metrics you're using is going to affect that overall weighted score, right? So the less metrics you're using, the more those individual metrics are going to affect your score up or down, okay? And then effort. So I can actually just click on this effort tile. You can get there from the drop down as well. But if I click on the effort tile, it'll take me to the customer effort, where we can see what their overall customer effort score is, which is reflected here as well. And then we're going to see a lot of the same stuff, right? So segment effort is going to be a manual slider. And in this case, effort high, bad, effort low, good. Whereas health, you want high health, is good versus low health is bad, right? So actually in this case, if we went down and said, segment effort is 25, right? 24 is what I landed on, then it's actually going to affect the effort score in a good way. The lower the effort, the better the score. Okay. Number of tickets per company. So right now we don't have the ConnectWise manage integration set up with this particular demo environment, but this would be pulling, you can see tickets from all companies and then looking at the average of all tickets for all companies versus how many tickets are currently open for this company, right? So that's going to determine that score. You can also pull in a risk assessment. We talked about that in the setup. And then stack alignment. So stack alignment is going to be manual. Now, this does not have anything to do with the stack alignment that's set from the alignment screen. So that's where it gets tricky, because if you did a manual slider like this, which you can, you would obviously want to make this match. But in this case, if I go down and I say 42, which is, going to match, there we go. I was waiting for the change to take place. So now we can see the match, and also their effort score went down and is now in the green because, again, we actually lowered the effort. Okay. Stack alignment went down too, but obviously there's a trade-off there. Stack alignment, when you get more aligned, that comes with higher value or more value, but it also probably comes with more effort as well, right? So there's a trade-off there. Then number of locations is polling. So this is looking at number of locations in the PSA tool for all companies versus how many locations this particular company, Creative Designs, has. And we've determined, that they're very low on that locations end. So 27% was the score there, and that's good. So that's affecting the health in a positive, effort in a positive way. And then the last thing here is contract hours used. So this right now is a manual slider, but the reason why our dev team put this in here is because this is something that we very much want to do with your PSA integration. Is we'd like to be able to pull in actual, contract hours against your agreements or contracts or whatever, depending on what your PSA tool is. But how many contract hours were entered against tickets? We would like to pull that in and automate that for you. But for right now, we do give you the manual slider to be able to do that. And in this case, we can see based on a monthly basis, because again, this is manual. So somebody would have to come in here and say, okay, this month they used 80% of their contract hours, or if they had 100 hours, they used 80 of those 100 hours. But the higher that number, the more red it's going to be, so bad. So that's going to affect the effort, right? But eventually, like I said, we'd like to automate that for you guys and make that easier. So you can see how those changes I made to those effort metrics actually, positively impacted their effort and got that into the green. Whereas before, when we started, we were sitting at a 60 and in the yellow. So those two metrics there, health and effort, along with value, are what determine your, in this case, it's going to be the MRR screen, or the MRR tile rather. Those three things are what determine where your customers fall on the customer segments. Okay. So in this case, creative designs is D. Okay. Which means they're low value and they're high effort. Okay. But this is actually going to change based on the changes that I made, to the effort portion of their scores and whatnot. So now if I go to customer segments, this will help make more sense out of what we were looking at earlier. And I apologize for it taking as long as it does. We've got a lot of data in our demo environment, so customer segments always takes a few minutes to load. But now we can see, what we were looking at earlier and make sense of it, right? So just hovering over the C, I can see Dharma Enterprises. They're green because their health is good. Okay, their effort is low. Okay, so they're in the green on both sides, and their value is also low because they've only got 1,400 contract value. Okay, and then right next door, we've got Planet Express. So low value, it's at 1,400, under that 3,500 segment cut, but they're yellow because their health score is below 80%, which is where the green kicks in. Their effort is also pretty low, but we're mainly looking at health when we determine what these colors are, right? We looked at those health cuts. And then over here, Hunter Lodge is over the 3,500 segment value, right? So high value, which is why they're in B, but they're also low effort, 16%. So they're high value, low effort. They're in the B column, but their health is down. So this would actually be a company that we would want to internally flag and figure out what we can do to get their health up, right? Because they're red. So they're in the sweet spot, but we need to address their health score and figure out why it's so low. Okay. So that's what customer segments is all about. Customer segments is about trying to figure out where all of your customers fall on this, graph, where you want them to be, which is typically in that B column, depending on what you want to call it. But you want high value, low effort, and you want to try to meet as close to these axes as axes. Is that the proper, plural term, Mark, for axes? Is it axes? Axes. We're going with axes.
Man, I don't even know.
So the closer we get to the axes, the more perfect we are in alignment, right? But you're not going to see that with all of your customers. That's going to be, the golden goose, or the red herring, so to speak. And then you take this information, and this is what you use to make action plans and figure out how you can get your C customers, over to the A or B column, and your D customers down into the low effort, but, increase their value and things like that. So it's about building action plans. And then, if somebody's super high effort, super low value, you can have that difficult conversation about, is the juice worth the squeeze, or is this customer that's worth firing? Because, we just can't justify putting in as much effort as we are for the amount of value that we're getting out of them, right? 100% effort, but their value is 275 bucks a month. So probably need to fire them, right? So that, in a nutshell, is customer segments. Any questions, guys?
Where are the integrations for
the customer success stuff? Is it under the VCIO tab, or am I?
Yeah, it's all the same, right? Yes, it's under. So if we go into, we'll just do this on the recording. If we go into VCIO, because that is a great question. It does come up. Integrations under the administration tab. And then all of these integrations apply to customer success as well. There's no separate side of the house with integrations. Okay.
Okay.
Great question though. But it's all of this stuff. So anything from, the CW manage in this case, but whatever your PSA tool is, all of that stuff is going to travel over to customer success where contracts are concerned, and your stack and all of that stuff, so that we can build out our MRR and our opportunities and things of that nature. And then, all of your CSAT integrations and stuff like that will play into that, effort score. So all of this feeds into customer success.
I guess I'm curious because, under my effort metrics, I only have one available metric, which is just
Yeah.
customer effort. It's just a slider.
Yep. But okay. So it's about what effort, or sorry, what integrations you have set up. Okay. So if here, let me stop the recording here, and then we can actually take a look at your integrations and figure out what's missing. Okay. So we're going to stop the recording, and thank you for attending week 2 of New to Customer Success. Bye-bye.